couple of ancient monetary systems. The first being agri-beads, which Safety touched on in his book, and the second one being panos, which is a form of cloth money. Both of these were used in Western Africa, and this is ancient Western Africa around. This was for thousands of years before, but Europeans actually landed in the 16th century. And what happened with agri-beads is the glassmaking technology was relatively primitive in Africa, such that these glass beads were relatively scarce to goods and services. So that gave them a monetary property which supported their market value, right? Until European explorers appeared in Africa in the 16th century, they quickly realized that these beads were being used as money and that they could be produced much more cheaply back in Europe. So glassmaking technology was very sophisticated back in Europe, and it wasn't long before intrepid Europeans were actually crafty and cunning Europeans as well, packing the ships, their hulls full of glass beads, and making expeditions into Africa to basically buy up their wealth with these counterfeit beads. And a similar dynamic played out with panos in that the cloth strips were used as money for a long time. They apparently came to Africa from trading with Muslim traders north of the Sahara, and it wasn't long before when Portuguese began trading with them, they soon monopolized the production of panos, and they would actually enforce this monopoly violently, right? So anyone that tried to produce panos, they would stomp them out, so to speak. And and they used the same approach with agri-beads, actually using the counterfeit money to acquire real wealth. And another kind of perverted aspect of that played out is a lot of the panos were actually constructed by expert weavers who were African weavers, so they would actually weave these panos. And so when they monopolized production, they began to actually enslave these weavers and use them to produce the very money they would take out and go and confiscate wealth from their countrymen. And it's the punchline of all this is, and I've thought about this a lot too, because in one aspect, it's just a technological disruption, right? And someone's coming in, they can produce money more cheaply than you. They can sort of siphon your wealth, which, again, Safe touches on a lot in his book. And we saw in the global switching to the gold standard from the silver standard, the countries that stayed on silver the longest suffered the most, right? But the moral of it is that if you have an exclusive right to produce money without regard to competitive market pressures, it basically acts as an apparatus of enslavement. And it's a privilege that a monopolist, in this case, can only preserve through deception and violence. So people will fight and kill for the privilege to control the production of money. And that single line governs a huge swath of human history. And when you do that, you're basically manipulating the free market signals that would keep the cost of money production near its market value, and you're creating this discrepancy that allows you to go out and acquire human labor in the market at an unfair price. So it actually becomes this weapon that I argue for stealing time. And when you look at what agri-beads actually became instrumental in the transatlantic slave trade, and they actually came to be known as slave beads. It started with the corruption of the currency, which leads to this, again, a moral corruption and actually enslaving populations. So monopolized money is a weapon for stealing human time. And that's the point I'm trying to make, looking at some of these ancient systems. And then later I compare it to central banking.